All legacy auto manufacturers can easily hit the UK and EU 2025 EV mandates. So why are they finding it such an impossible transition? Stick around as Dave takes it on. A big shout out to all our Patreon members. Without you, we would not be able to make videos like this. Many viewers will agree with me. Doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense to give your competitors a massive cash injection, probably the best part of $1 billion. Yet in 2024, that is what most of the legacy auto industry gave to their bitter rival, Tesla. So what actually happened? When 2024, most of the legacy auto industry fell short of their targets. They had specific targets to hit both in the UK and in the EU. Those targets were set in stone at the beginning of the year. They knew what the targets were. And when they failed to reach them by the end of the year, they had a number of choices. One of those choices was just to sit back and do nothing, in which case they would receive draconian fines from the relevant governments. And those fines would have been verging on the point of bankruptcy for several of them. They could have swapped credits between the various legacy auto industries. The trouble was, most of them didn't have any credits to swap. So within the rules, they were able to turn to companies that had credits, and these were the pure EV companies. And that included Rivian and, of course, Tesla. Now, Rivian was a relatively small company. They don't sell tens of thousands of cars in a year, so they had a limited number of credits available to offer. Tesla sold the best part of 2 million cars a year. Every single one was an EV, and so they had an absolute mass of credits available for them. And it turned out, quite simply, it was cheaper for the legacy auto industry to buy those credits from Tesla than it was to take the draconian fines from the relevant governments. So it was not done willingly. It was the cheapest option available to legacy auto. There were two major elements at play in 2024. The first of those was an internal battle between sometimes the CEOs who might want to go more EVs, maybe not all EV, but more in the direction of EVs alongside the ICE, and some of these die-in-the-wool board members who are very traditionalist, who didn't want to go EV at all. And you see these internal battles developing. We saw it with Stellantis, where the board fell out with Tavares. And he was ousted very, very quickly. We saw it earlier with Volkswagen and Herman Diess. He wanted to go very much in favour of EVs. He said it was the future, and the board disagreed, and he was out instantly as well. So there was an internal battle going on with this. Some people want EVs, some people want ICE, and just an internal struggle. Running alongside that, there was also a massive standoff, a challenge, where the legacy auto were not prepared to be pushed around by the governments, by these EV mandates. They did not want to have to conform to specific targets. They wanted to dictate the pace at which they were going to transition towards EVs. And these mandates did not fit in with their plans. These mandates were forcing them to change at a pace they didn't agree with. So during 2024, we saw a little bit of it's a Western duel, the two gunslingers walking down the street towards each other. Who's going to blink first? And we saw the legacy auto standing up to the UK and the EU governments and saying, we're not going to back down. And the government said, we're not going to back down either. And so there was a certain amount of stagnation throughout the year when people were wondering who's actually going to win this battle. If Legacy Auto win the battle, the mandates will be either scrapped or reduced, and the Legacy Auto will do what they want to do. If the governments won and the mandates were enforced or strengthened, then Legacy Auto would be forced to move at a much faster pace. And it played out right virtually to the end of the year. And then finally, the government actually triumphed. And it was the Legacy Auto that had to back down. And of course, at this point, towards the end of the year, it was very, very late. And so it was too late in order to try and catch up the ground they'd lost while they were holding this head-to-head battle. So the battle internally was in diametric opposition to what Tesla was enjoying. Tesla, throughout all of this, had one CEO. He was never in any doubt. They also had one mission statement, which dated right the way back to 2006, never varied. And so they had this steadfast purpose right throughout, which is still running to this day. So they know where they're going. They've always known where they're going. Legacy Auto today still doesn't actually know where it's heading or who's going to be leading them there. Now, why did I say that Legacy Auto manufacturers could easily hit the 2025 targets for both the UK and the EU? Doesn't seem to make sense. Well, in simple terms, they could have just dropped the prices of the EVs that they made. Would have been really simple. Most of the Legacy Auto did actually make quite a few EVs. And had they dropped those prices down to a really, well, in some cases, really silly level, for example, a Fiat 500, they're still trying to sell those at over £30,000. Absolutely ridiculous. They'll never sell them at that price. But had they dropped that down to £20,000, there'd been a queue of people waiting to buy them. So why didn't they do that? And the simple answer to that is because they'd have lost money on them. But not only on the EVs, because at £20,000, they would have lost sales on the petrol version of the Fiat 500 or the Ford or the Vauxhall or whatever it was. So it would have started affecting their ICE car sales, and that's the part of the company that makes the most of the profit. So Legacy Auto had a choice. They could have produced and sold the EVs at a discounted price and easily hit those targets in 2024, which would have required them to spend not a penny with Tesla. But that would have been at the expense of their ICE car sales and their ICE car profits. And that would have been at the expense of the entire organization. And that was a step too far. The problem is a little bit more advanced than that, in that no EVs ever make them a profit. And we have to look again to Tesla for this, because Tesla started way back. Effectively, it's been going a long time before, but when Elon Musk got involved and invested all the money and started going places, it was about 2006. But the first time Tesla turned a profit was 2017. And up until 2017, there were several occasions when it was on the point of going bankrupt. But there's a period of more than 10 years when Tesla just made no profit whatsoever. It was just investing in the company to try and get it to a point where they would be able to launch a mass market car that would at that point allow them to start making a profit. And from that point on, Tesla's been just such a fantastically profitable organization. So if the Legacy Auto had discounted the EVs, they would have seen a loss on the EV side of the business. They would have seen a loss on the ICE side of the business. And with the massive debts that they already have built up on the ICE side of the business over the last 20, 30, 40 years, it would have just about been the end of the companies. If you look at a company like Volkswagen, for example, their profit last year was 60 billion. The value of the company, the capex they call it, is 59 billion. The total debt is about 280 billion. It's just a crazy situation. It's hovering always on the brink of just going out of business. It can't possibly pay off its debts. It just hovers all the time in this very fine balance of, can we keep going another year? And for someone like Volkswagen to have made enough EVs to have hit all their targets, it would have affected their ICE business. And when the markets, Wall Street, would see the profitability going down on the ICE side and on the EV side, that could trigger the total collapse of the whole company. So it was a very careful balance for all of the legacy auto to decide the best thing for them is to just give money to Elon Musk and Tesla. Before we reveal the impossible transition, thank you for reaching this stage in the video. If you have enjoyed this, please subscribe. It is totally free to do so. What is the answer to the impossible transition? Strangely enough, it will almost certainly involve even more debt. You see, in 2030 in the UK and 2035 in Europe, all cars sold will be 100% EV. So the future is definitely going to be EV. So at some point, having tested the various governments, the EU Commission and the UK government, and found them to be absolutely rock solid, steadfast, they now know that these targets are set in stone. They are going to have to achieve them. So they are going to transition through to EVs. And to do so, they're going to go through some serious pain and some serious losses along the way. Tesla took a long time before they became profitable. So they need some good leaders to take them there, someone with vision, someone with drive, someone with belief that EVs are the future. And then they need to set off and convince Wall Street, the financiers, the bankers, that they're worth investing in. Because if they can get the investment and set off on this transition through to EVs, then by the time they get to 2030 or 2035, they will be in a position where they will have reached profitability, they will have reached mass production, and they will be on the road to the future. That is the impossible transition. They need the right people and the right plan. And unfortunately today, there is no sign of either. They are still recovering from having found out that the targets ahead of them are set in stone. They've not yet set off on their own journeys for the future. We await the results of what happens when they realise that is the only future for them. I'm Dave. Thank you for watching.